Shavua Tov. Good morning. Shavua Tov. Good morning. May I have your attention, please? Thank you. We're going to begin now. If I can have everyone please take your seats, get your food. We're going to start now. May I have your attention, please? Thank you. Welcome to Hinda's annual event. My name is Rachmiel Chaim Drizin. I serve as the chair of our Legal Advisory Committee, and I've done so since I retired from the Public Defender's Office, where I worked for 30 years. This year's event theme is Everyone Deserves a Second Chance. It's about celebrating all of our humanity. We all make mistakes, but we all deserve the opportunity to repair and rebuild our lives. I want, first of all, to publicly thank our generous and compassionate donors. They support not only this event, but our Hinda activities that have made such an impact on the lives of the most vulnerable in our community. The Walder Foundation, the Crane Mailing Foundation, as well as Prodigy Produce. This year, we have a big team that has done tremendous work. We'd like to thank our board. Their guidance and support have been so instrumental in our programming, our casework, and our reach. In particular, we want to thank the Gables, Rick Lickman, and Mark Bustlick for making this event popular. An introduction would not be complete without introducing our director, Rabbi Shyman. Rabbi Shyman is the longest-serving prison chaplain in Illinois for over 45 years. And he's been a chaplain in correctional institutes, retirement, and senior living centers. Rabbi Shyman told me that this is his calling commitment. Any Jew in any correctional facility in the state of Illinois would be visited at least once a month, no matter how many miles needed to drive or how dark, oppressive, or intimidating the environment may seem. Hinda has grown, prison chaplains of Illinois, from 7 years ago, and now Rabbi Shyman visits 30 correctional institutions all over Illinois, federal, state, and many jails, at least once a month, traveling 40,000 miles. He represents the best of Hinda, about second chances, and we also help families who have a loved one re-entering society and supports those families who have children. We have a miraculous recidivism rate because we care. Rabbi Shyman.
Thank you, Rachmiel, and thank you for all our board members and supporters, and thank you for everybody who came here today. I don't know if anybody else in the room heard about, there was a big convention, a big stadium was sold out, 75,000 blondes came to the stadium, and they were going to debunk the myth that blondes are dumb. So they have this big convention, this big stadium filled, and the MC calls up the smartest one in the room and says, remember, your answer, the whole world is listening. It was live streamed all over the world. And he said, tell me what 83 plus 83 is. And she said, 16. 25,000 of the blondes get up and says, give her a second chance. Give her a second chance. Then he says, okay, tell me what is 100 plus 100. She says, 3. 50,000 of the blondes get up and says, give her another chance. Give her another chance. And he said, okay, listen, this is the third time is the charm. He says, what is 1 plus 1? 1 plus 1. And she says 2. And all 75,000 blondes get up and say, give her another chance. Give her another chance. So we are here to celebrate second chances, and it's twofold. First, there are individuals that I have been seeing for over 40 years. And for many of these individuals, for much of their lives, they've been shouted at by their parents, principals, parole agents, local police, whoever, employers, they're always told how much trouble they are, and they live down to that reputation. And when I come in to see these individuals, so I want you to picture this. I come in a room where there's 10 individuals who have been told this their whole life. Myself and the other chaplains at Hinda are trained to make sure to look and tell them about why they are an original product of God. They're a limited edition, a one and only. They're here because they're so important. And this is, for many of them, the first time they've heard this. And it's people that it's like they have inside of them a treasure chest. And when they're told these words, it opens. So I'm sitting in a room with 10 treasure chests. They're filled with diamonds and rubies and gold and silver, and it's so bright in that room. And therefore, I will never get burnt out of what I'm doing, because every time I walk into a place, there's energy. And one thing that I've taught and conveyed to all these individuals, give yourself a second chance. Because many of them find it hard to forgive themselves. And sometimes they look down at themselves, but we at Hinda give them resources, help, support, and the main thing is they have to know they are very, very special, and they do give themselves a second chance, and they run with that. There's a second element. Then we come back, all these beautiful individuals, treasure chests, come out into the community, and they find out they want to rent a house. Oh, not you. A job? Oh, you have a felony. They come into their faith community. They come into a shul. Not really. Maybe in the back row. Maybe not at all. So society has to know, and I believe in America there's not thousands, not tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands. There's millions of Americans that are treasures that the economy, that the country is missing because they're pushed off as, they're felons, and they're given these lifetime sentences. They're permanently punished, and society needs to give a second chance. Society needs to give everybody a second chance, and that's what this evening, this afternoon is all about, that now that the individuals that we see are coming out, staying out, and they want to re-enter, open your hearts, open your minds, and grab some of that treasure, bring them into your life. Thank you again for coming.
It is my honor to introduce Hinda's Volunteer of the Year, Mark Bustlick. Mark is a retired 39-year veteran of police officer, sergeant, lieutenant, and captain of Chicago Police Department. And most recently, he was the commander of the 19th Town Hall District on Chicago's North Side. Mark serves on the faculty at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and the Department of Criminology, Law, and Justice. He got his PhD from the Criminology, Law, and Justice program at UIC and taught for over 25 years at the University of Chicago, Oakton College, and the Illinois Institute of Technology. He's a member of the Chicago Council on Mental Health Equity, and providing input to City of Chicago mental health response policies and practices. He's also been a longtime consultant with the United States Department of Justice, the DOJ. What blows my mind is that I spent 30 years as a public defender, and to have somebody who, from the other side, from the police and the law enforcement, coming to help us at Hinda, he is a treasure for us. We're proud to have him a member of the Hinda's Institute Advisory Board, and he helps us provide important interface policing with political and police connections. Please, let's have a round of applause for Mark.
Yes, you can lower it. It's fine. I won't be offended. Yes. I'm used to it. Yeah, it's good. No, thank you. Yeah, that's good. Well, thank you, Rachmiel. This recognition from the Hinda Institute would be an honor for anyone to receive. But for it to go to a police officer makes it especially worth noting. For those of you not familiar with the criminal legal system and its traditional structure moving a person through it, from law enforcement to prosecution to the courts and finally through to corrections, it has almost always been the case that law enforcement on the front end has very little to do with corrections on the back end. While I had often thought, as both a police officer and as an academic, that the police should be interested in the future of that person returning to our community after having served their punishment, known as reentry, to ensure true public safety and reduce recidivism or the likelihood of reoffending. It wasn't until I had the opportunity to work with the Hinda Institute that I truly understood my thinking. Hinda is indeed a mechanism for us to work towards a more rational criminal legal system. Hinda provides support for those in custody, for families who have encountered the criminal justice system, who have a loved one who is in custody, for those re-entering our communities to rebuild their lives for good, and most importantly, their children, so that we can reduce or individually eliminate recidivism. Hinda works to provide public safety for all, even the police. They have a miraculously low recidivism rate. And I myself have led and witnessed transformation and second chances while leading one of their classes as part of their monthly education program. Hinda is part of the infrastructure of this transformed, true criminal justice system, helping to move society beyond just reform, fixing what's broken, into true transformation, making society what we want it to be going forward, not just for a budget cycle, but for 3, 5, 10, 20 years, generations from now. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Abby, and the entire Hinda staff and group of volunteers for bestowing upon this cop this award and personal validation. And as my son Andrew would say, be kind. Thank you.
It's always wonderful to see Rabbi Moskowitz. Always impressive to see him in important things. Simchas, we'd like to have the Rabbi Moskowitz please come up and read the letter of the Rebbe about criminal justice system and sentencing, please.
The Rebbe's love and concern and care for every individual, for the incarcerated, for their families is well known. There are many letters and many talks on that theme. Today I want to share a letter that talks about second chances, the theme of today's event. And this letter is printed in a beautiful book If you don't have it, you should really get it. Wit and Wisdom by Rabbi Shyman, Volume 3. In the back, there's a beautiful collection of letters from the Rebbe. And the Rebbe writes as follows on Lag BaOmer 5724, blessings and greetings. After not hearing from you for a long time, I was pleased to receive your letter of Pesach Sheni, containing a report of the activities of the Parents Association. May God grant that these activities should be continued at a growing pace with joy and gladness of heart. I trust you know the interpretation of Pesach Sheni, which was heard from my father-in-law of saintly memory, namely, that one of its essential messages is that it is never too late. A Jew always gets a second chance to do what he may have failed to do, whether through his own fault or through the fault of circumstances. As a matter of fact, sometimes a second chance may provide advantages which were lacking the first time. This is indicated in Pesach Sheni, when the Korban Pesach could be brought and observed without having to clear the chametz first, whereas in the case of the regular Pesach, of course, the chametz has to be very carefully cleared out before. May God grant that your continued good work should stand each and every one of you in good stead, and may you and your husband have true Yiddish Chassidish nachas from your children with blessings and the Rebbe's signature.
We have a special guest star here today. John Vincent, who is the resident national anthem singer for the Chicago Cubs, is here. He has appeared on national television networks, and he is singing an original composition on Second Chances. John?
So I had the honor to meet Rabbi through a mutual friend, and a little different way. It was about 2 years ago, Rabbi. I suffer with mental illness, pure OCD, depression, anxiety, and I was very badly abused and beaten as a child in school, and I had a loving family. Thank God that was there for me. Right now, my father is suffering from Parkinson's and dementia. I had a friend who played for the Chicago Bears, Steve McMichael, just passed away, a very good friend of mine. I just sang at his funeral, from ALS. And there's other things in my life that are happening with other people that I love. And I was driving on Grand Avenue when you made me cry, Rabbi. And Rabbi goes to me, he goes, Johnny, he goes, Southside Italian kid from Chicago, Catholic, and a Jewish Orthodox rabbi from the North Side are brought together. He goes, what is that? I don't know. He goes, it's a mitzvah. It's God. I love you, man. So, I'm a little nervous because I wrote this song. The rabbi asked me if I could do that. I said anything for you because to keep me comfortable and make me feel good, especially in the career I'm in when you're always having people coming after you. To know somebody's in your corner with love means a lot, and a second chance is what we all need. Because if it wasn't for my family and the things, I don't know where I would have ended up today. And again, God brought me another man into my life today in Rabbi Shyman. So I'll do it a cappella right here. It's called Second Chance. Every time we fall, every time we try, we rise again to reach the sky, looking for peace, looking for love, looking for hope from above. Everybody loves, everybody needs, everybody deserves a second chance from above, saying please. What we need is love, what we need is a second chance, seeing eye to eye, soul to soul, knowing what's true, what's the goal, being there strong, never giving up, Always make sure you fill someone's cup. Everybody loves, everybody needs, everybody deserves a second chance from above, saying please. What we need is love, we need a second chance. So don't give up, don't walk away. The light you need might shine today. Hold on to love, let kindness guide, and just remember, we all deserve another try, that second chance. Love you guys.
Thank you so much, John. That was wonderful. So I'm going to introduce the second half of the better half of the dynamic duo, Abby, Rebbetzin Abby, who was my pleasure and delight to work with on the Hinda matters. She is the program coordinator who initiated the Hinda Counseling and Casework Program and the Employment Monthly Education Program. She's going to be giving the awards to our volunteers. Abby?
I'd like to call up all our volunteers, please, to come. Where's Bela? Oh. I'd like to call up all our volunteers to come, please, to the right and stand over here with your awards. This team is actually proof that God answers my prayers. Every holiday, the Hinda Institute provides a home away from home for the holidays for people sometimes who have nowhere else to go. And we also deliver packages. 80% of our clients are beneath the poverty line. 50% of our families and children are beneath the poverty line. And these packages and these events are more than a lifeline. They show people in our community that our community remembers them. They show them that they're not isolated and that people care. And the number of these packages kept growing, and the people at the events kept growing. And I was throwing up my hands a little bit because, you know, most of my time is casework, is grants, is the education program, and this was getting too much. All of a sudden, I get a call from somebody named Sandy that I never heard before, never heard of before. And she arrived that day with a whole crew of very organized volunteers. They fundraised, they ordered the packages, they packed up the packages, and in some cases, they even delivered them. And the delivery is the hardest part, because we're all around Chicago. And this has been amazing. I don't know how to thank them. I'm going to thank them from the words of a client that I'd like to read out that a client sent me, texted me. It's one of our mothers who's getting a little older, and she wrote, with a son who has some mental health issues. And she wrote, "You have made an amazing difference in my life during a time of such uncertainty. It's much appreciated. Thank you for stopping by. It was nice to receive matzah and agada, and I'm feeling better today. I'm on strong pain medication and antibiotics. Thank you for the nicest Passover goodies. I especially like the macaroons." And it's these people who volunteer and all of our people who are so passionate about Hinda Institute that makes us what we are. And it's people like you that show up for who we are and what we do that is making a difference in our communities and in our society. I'm going to read out the names, and you're going to hold applause, and then we're going to applause at the end, and then they're going to sit down. So some people couldn't make it today, but I'm going to start with Barbara Belsky, Warren Brenner, Lucy Glassman, Sandy Hansen and her brother Albert, Barbara Mandelbaum. Jenny was sick today, unfortunately, but she's a powerhouse. Vicki Ross, Cheryl Rothstein, Fran Schwartz's son is sick today, and Lisa Norca couldn't make it. Let's give them a big hand. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Abby. It's my honor, true honor, to introduce our main speaker for today, Sammy Horowitz. Sammy is an award-winning Jewish screenwriter, professional boxer, and stuntman from Chicago, and a former gang member who spent over 8 years in Illinois prison. He is truly a Renaissance man, and we are so honored to have him here today. A little bit about his history. After struggling with drug and alcohol addiction upon his release, Sammy decided to get completely clean and sober and began training in boxing and competing regularly. After many amateur fights and becoming a semifinalist in the Chicago Golden Gloves, Sammy turned professional. Through boxing, he made connections in both television and film, and with his athletic abilities, became a working Hollywood stuntman. He has now performed in upwards of 100 episodes of television, 30 films, and multiple music videos and national commercials. In 2017, Sammy met his writing partner, Adam Passon, and began collaborating on both films and original pilots. Sammy is also a playwright, and his original play, Musket and the Rat, opened to critical acclaim in Los Angeles in 2020. His short movie, Danny Boy, has received multiple awards and wide recognition in the festival circuit. Sammy's ties with Chabad began in 2002 when he first met Rabbi Shyman while incarcerated at the Shawnee Correctional Center. Rabbi Shyman has remained a central part of Sammy's life and a mentor throughout. In response to the terrorist attacks on October 7, 2023, Sammy flew to Israel 10 days and volunteered around the country in whatever capacity he could. Upon returning home, he established the Bear Jew, remember the movie Inglourious, etc., boxing club, where over a year now he has taught weekly self-defense boxing classes to religious and secular Jews alike to help combat anti-Semitism completely free of charge. Currently, Sammy is a fellow at the Northwestern University Justice Fellowship, and he co-founded the Justice Impacted Writers Project along with Adam, his playwriting partner. They aim to reduce recidivism while teaching incarcerated men in Illinois how to write for television. Sammy and Adam have gone to write both television and film. Sammy and his wife, Sari, now split their time between Chicago and Los Angeles, where Sammy is passionate about activism, especially regarding the criminal justice system and the prison industrial complex. Sammy is living proof that we really can fight the criminalization of mental health. He is living proof of the value on second chances. Personally, my father, bless him, memory, his name was Sammy Dre. He was a comedian. So another Sammy, I love that. Sammy, please.
This is perfect. I feel like my job here is done. He just said it all right now. I feel like I could also certainly check off a lot of boxes on the resume with that kind of introduction, but I'm really happy to be here. Like it was said, I met Rabbi Shyman in 2002. Rabbi said that he doesn't remember the exact first meeting, but I actually do remember our first meeting. And I had just slit my wrist in Shawnee. I was 19 years old. I'm almost 42 now. And they put me on suicide watch. And so they put me in this smock. It's like a suicide gown. And they had me on watch 24/7 in this terrible room in the hospital, in the prison. And Rabbi came up, and I was just thinking to myself, who is this guy, you know? And he comes up to the glass and asked me what my Hebrew name was. And, you know, I told him Zalman Hanan. And, you know, that was he was just like, oh, okay, Zalman Hanan. And so we established this relationship, and that's carried on until today. But I'll back up a little bit, and let me set my timer so I know when to shut up. All right. Thank you. So, you know, originally, when I was a little kid, my family, we lived outside of Cleveland, Ohio. And both of my parents worked. You know, we didn't grow up broke or in the projects or anything like that. And I kind of attribute everything that happened to me as a direct result of myself, because I just found myself always attracted to the wrong things. And I was always getting into trouble growing up. I got expelled from, I can't even count how many schools, placements. And I was, you know, in and out of juvie and hospitals, different types of institutions, placements, boarding schools, whatever you want to call them. Nothing really worked for me. I should back up just a little bit. You know, I come from a conservative Jewish household. When I was a little kid, and this is in the 80s, my family kept a kosher house. That really dissipated when we got a little older. But, you know, going to the synagogue was a big part of my childhood. And I'd like to say that it remained that way growing up, but it didn't. I actually got kicked out of Hebrew school, I think for fighting, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of ironic with what happened later on. But, you know, things didn't pan out the way we thought they would back then. And I just kept on getting into so much trouble that I didn't really spend too much time at home growing up in the 90s. And I really struggled. I suppose I had some friends. I had one best friend, and, you know, I think a lot of kids were scared of me, and kids' parents didn't want me hanging out with them. And when I got older, you know, in my teenage years, my family moved to Chicago. For my father, you know, took a job out here, and my mom had a job out here. And, you know, I just continued on the same path of just going down the wrong road. And so when I was 18, already by that time into drugs and alcohol and hanging with the wrong people, I ended up getting arrested for armed robbery, and I got sentenced to 10 years. And I went to prison, and prison for me was unlike, I think, the experience for I would say the majority, not all, but the majority of people that go to prison, because I wasn't a model inmate by any stretch of the imagination. I got into a lot of trouble. You know, I was a gang member, for one, in a Latino gang as a Jew. But, you know, and that's who I really associated with. And, you know, I used to have this term in my brain, lead by example, but it meant a different thing to me back then, right? Leading by example to me back then meant that I wouldn't take any disrespect from anybody, and I would, you know, fight at a moment's notice, and I didn't care if it was an inmate or a correctional officer or anybody. I was going to stand my ground and I was going to, lead by example. And I wouldn't cooperate with authorities because in my mind that was a weakness. I was going to lead by example. That's what I thought leading by example was back then. And the rabbi would come visit me monthly, and back then I would put on a show, right? I was not religious at all. I used to make wine with the grape juice that rabbi would bring me for Passover, right? I don't think anybody else is doing that, by the way. I'm not trying to ruin anybody else's parade for Passover. But, this was my life at that time. And, I just was lost. Out of the 8 years, 7 months, and, 15, 16, 17 days I spent in prison, I spent about 5.5 of those in solitary confinement for fights, assaults, insolence, intimidation and threats. I could go down the list of all the infractions, stupid, bad things that I shouldn't have been doing. And, but the rabbi was like a reprieve. He would come see me, and I really liked him, and I respected him, right? He kept a lifeline. He talked to my mother and father. They communicated with him. And I just felt like I needed to be on my best behavior when the rabbi came, So I would go, and I would whatever, put on my nice blues and go to the meeting and talk to him and be around the other Jews that were taking this seriously. And I would, play the part because I liked the rabbi, and then I would go back and I would gangbang and I would get into fights, and that was kind of my life, right? But I had like a speck of curiosity, you know what I mean? I would read a lot of books. I read like Judaism for Dummies and whatever my mom and dad sent me, And so anyways, I got out of prison. I'm just going to speed this little portion up because it's not what's so important. I got out of prison originally, I believe it was June or July of 2007. But I went right back. I did see the rabbi, I believe, once or twice. But I just got sucked right back into everything. And I ended up hanging out with my old friends and some new ones that weren't too good either. And I got back into drugs and alcohol, and I found myself addicted to heroin, and I found myself committing crimes again. And I found myself right back in prison, which is exactly where I belonged. And thank God I went back. Thank God I went back, because I believe it saved my life, not initially, but had I stayed out, I would certainly not be here today. So it was actually, I call it a God shot, one of many. I call it a God shot, things that happen that are beyond my control that I can only attribute to God. It's a God shot that I got set up by another drug addict and sent right back to prison. So I spent about 2 years, 8 months and some change, and I got back out. And initially, I went back to the same old, and I kept in contact with the rabbi, and, he kept in contact with my family. And I guess things got so bad with me that I just kind of didn't care if I lived or died anymore. I didn't really think I had much to offer this world. It was kind of just a waiting game until somebody killed me or I overdosed, which I did 3 times, but miraculously was resuscitated by Narcan, but still it was miraculous. And, I just didn't think that I had much to offer this world. I was able to get sober. I've been sober since September 17, 2012 from everything, right? So I've been clean. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And obviously that's a pivotal moment. That was something that, none of this, I would not be here right now if I was not sober. And that's certainly a huge facet of my story. But, when that happened, things just started slowly changing. I started having a desire to do good things, right? I've always been a really selfish person. I've never really cared much about other people, you know. So much so that I was like worried, am I a sociopath? I'm not, you know. I took a few tests. I'm not, thankfully. But I was worried because, you know, I've always just been so selfish and just thinking for my, you know, me. And what's wild is that, you know, once I got rid of the drugs, once I got rid of the alcohol, once I got away from a lot of the people that I used to associate with, I started thinking a little bit more about other people and wanting to do good things for other people, and it made me feel good. I suppose in a way that's selfish too, because I like the feeling that I get from helping other people. It makes me feel good, you know. But I suppose it's not the worst form of selfishness. In any event, you know, like was kind of alluded to, I guess, in the little preamble here, I didn't really know what I was going to do. And I was bouncing at nightclubs, and you know, that was a job, but I wasn't going to be able to go too far with that. And I was older. I was in my mid-20s. So what am I really going to do? You know, it's hard. I hadn't graduated from college. I took a couple courses here and there. Had a GED, which I cheated on in the county jail. So, you know, I was kind of in a little pickle, as you would say. But you know, I started training in MMA and boxing, and like, you know, he said, I had some fights, some amateur fights and whatnot. It wasn't, you know, got 2 Golden Glove champs sitting right over here. My buddy Russ and Josh over here both won the Golden Gloves. They're studs. I did it, yeah, give them a hand. But I never won the gloves, but it was enough for me that I said, okay, I think I can do this. I can make a living. So I turned professional in boxing. You know, I wasn't able to make a living as a boxer. There was a reason why most Jews pivoted back in the day into, you know, smarter job prospects back, you know, after the Depression, and got into things like accounting and, you know, the medical field and things like that. But I was all right. I did okay. I had 13 pro fights and fought all over the country, and it was an unbelievable experience. And I look back really fondly on those days. It was a great time. And even though I turned professional a little later in my life, I did all right. I retired with a winning record. I had a lot of friends, and I made a lot of friends during the time. And I stayed sober, and I stayed connected to the rabbi. And I had a lot of Jewish people that supported me, you know? And that was really cool. And I always had a big Magen David on my trunks, you know? And Horowitz across my belt line. And I was proud of that. I was proud to, like, come back as one of the few Jewish professional boxers today. And it was a great experience. But again, as I said, I realized I wasn't going to become a world champion, you know. So what am I going to do? And that question was answered for me because my boxing promoter, who, you know, nice guy, and I love him dearly, but he was a character, you know. He's kind of like got a wise guy type of personality. And he asked me if I wanted to be an extra, which is background on a TV show. I said, sure. Does it pay money? He goes, yeah. I go, all right, good, I'll do it. So I went and did an audition to play, you know, a side character on a TV show, what is it, in 2013, a little more than 12 years ago. And they liked me, but I didn't get the job, and so they let me go. And then I got a phone call later that night. They said, Sammy, you still available to work these days? I go, yeah, okay. I said, are you guys still paying me for the job? He goes, yeah. I said, yeah, of course. So they said, we want you to come meet the fight coordinator. I didn't know what all this stuff was gibberish to me, as I'm sure it sounds like to you right now, but he says, we want you to meet the fight coordinator. I didn't know what a fight coordinator was, but whatever. I go and meet this guy. He says, you're a boxer, right? I go, yeah. He says, okay, I want you to be the double of this actor that's going to do a job on the TV show. I said, okay, fine. And I did. And it was incredible. I was on this set with all these stars, people that I've seen on TV growing up. I couldn't believe that I was getting paid for it. I'm hanging out by it's called craft services, where they have all the food, and I'm just loving life, and the hair and makeup ladies are telling me how great I am. And it was a great experience for me. I couldn't believe it, and I wanted to keep it going. And so this woman, she goes, you can do this. And another stunt guy, who's not here today, one of my dear friends is here, who I'll introduce in a little bit, but this other stunt guy, he goes, Sammy, you know what? You can make a career playing the bad guy. And I thought to myself, here we go. So I'll skip through some of the struggles of getting into that business, but I got into that business. And I became friends with a lot of the key stunt professionals out here in Chicago, because there's a big film and television industry out here, as I'm sure a lot of you know. And my buddy Christian Licky over here, who's the handsome guy at the table sitting next to Rabbi Shyman, he's one of the best stunt coordinators and stunt performers in the country, but he was kind enough to come and support me, and he's somebody that helped me very much when I first got into this business. And it changed my life. It changed my life. So then I decided my goal was going to be to become the best bad guy that I could possibly be, but for pretend on television. And I tell you what, everybody, I had a knack for it. I really did, because people were coming up to me left and right saying, Sammy, God, you made that stick-up look so natural. The director decided to keep the dialogue that you added. True story. It really happened more than once. So I realized, okay, I got something going on here, right? Now, through this time, I was still occasionally showing up with the rabbi, right? I'd say yearly. I would go to Des Plaines. I'd break the fast at Yom Kippur. I would go see the rabbi. Sometimes I would help him pack up the macaroons and the matzah and everything for the guys that are still locked up. I still wanted to be a part of things, you know. But I wouldn't say that by any stretch of the imagination I was Jewish or that I was religious by any means, right? But I was still connected with the rabbi. He still meant something dearly to me, and I wanted to stay, you know, friendly with him, right? And I went through some relationships, and some of them didn't pan out. And I met my now wife. Her name is Sari Sanchez. She's like the best. She's like the best of both worlds in my eyes. She's a Mexican Jew. It's like I love Latinos and I love Jews. It's so perfect. I met the love of my life. And yeah, and I met her, and she's an actress, and you know, I would tell her these stories. Now, at the time, I should tell you, I was seeing a therapist, and this therapist said to me, he goes, you know, I had just gotten into like the television and film industry. He goes, buddy, I want to stop seeing you professionally. I want to write a book with you. And I told my wife about that, she was my girlfriend back then, but I tell her, I was real excited, and she goes, that's unprofessional. She says, that's crazy. You can't do that. I said, really? Why? He's a great guy. He is a great guy. But she said, no, you can't do that. She goes, let me tell you something. I got a friend. He's a writer in Hollywood. You know, he's a lot different than you. You guys are real different. He grew up on the North Shore. He's a PhD. You know, he's a real bubbly guy. But I think you guys might hit it off. You should go out there and talk to this guy and write a movie. I go, I don't know anything about writing movies. I used to read a lot, and I used to write, you know, stories in prison, but I wouldn't know the first thing about how to write a film. But I go out to Los Angeles. I meet my now best friend, Adam, and we started collaborating on this film. And it started with him writing my story, and then I started getting curious and reading books and learning myself how to write. I took a couple classes, blah, blah, blah. and I became a writer. It's a little harder than that sounds right now, but it happened. And so, you know, I went from that to us collaborating. My wife and I moved to Los Angeles about 8 years ago. And, you know, I was worried that I wasn't going to work because being out here, you get in, you're with your friends. If you're talented, you can work. Out there in California, everybody's talented, and there's 20,000 times the amount of people. My wife said, don't worry about it, you're going to work. And thank God I did. And I was able to have a career as a stuntman out there as well while I was learning how to write and while I was perfecting that craft. I guess it's never perfected, but nonetheless. And so what ended up happening is we sold a movie, Adam and I, not the one that we originally wrote. That almost got made. Hopefully it still will, God willing, but that got us in the door. You know, we had a big movie star attached to it for a while. And everybody wanted to be our friends for about 2 seconds. And, you know, when that died down, I didn't really know what we were going to do. But it just so happened that a guy that I met who was the head writer of a television show found out I was from Chicago and was running a TV show in Chicago and said, hey, listen, send me your best sample of a television show in Chicago. To make that, to take the puzzle pieces out of that, to make this make sense, writers have samples that they try to get jobs with of a original thing. So whatever. So I gave him a sample, and we got hired for this job. I had no idea how big of a deal that was, because to me it was just, okay, I gave it to you, you hired me, great. But, you know, it takes, you know, some people never get jobs writing television. They try very, very hard. So it was a God shot. That was another God shot that happened to me. And so we became writers. So whatever. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm a television writer. We write movies. We do all that. I'm a playwright. He said it all before. So now I'll talk about some Jewish-related things. October 7th, 2023 happens. And I had a lot of really, really, really difficult emotions, as I'm sure every single person in this room had. I knew one person in Israel at that time. He's sitting right there in the green shirt. His name's Josh Andre. Josh is a hero. Josh was in a special unit in the IDF. He was in the Yamas unit. He was on the line in Gaza. And he is an incredible person. And in truth, Josh should probably be up here more than me, but I'm happy to talk about him, and I'm happy to introduce him. Now, I want to just tell you something quickly. The reason I'm bringing up Josh and the reason I'm bringing up me knowing him in Israel is because I didn't know Josh. Josh knows the son of a friend of mine, okay? But he messaged me because I did a podcast that went on YouTube, and I told my story. And Josh messaged me when he was going through training, I believe, to become a Special Forces soldier in Israel. And he just said, hey, buddy, I want to let you know I know so-and-so that you know, and we've never met, but I used to see you at the boxing gym. He's a boxer. I used to see you. I never talked to you. And I'm going through a bunch of nonsense here in the Army to get into this special unit, and I think about quitting all the time, but I watched your podcast, and, you know, salute to you, and I'm going to stick it out. And he did, and that's by no means anything because of me, but it felt good getting that message that somebody actually cared about enough to watch the podcast, A, and B, that, you know, it had a nice, you know, I had a good message to that person. And so I said, hey, thanks a lot, buddy, and all the best. And I was real proud to know a soldier in IDF, and you know, I told him be safe. So when October 7th happened, the first person I thought about was Josh, and I reached out to his dad, or not his dad, but his friend's dad that I know, who sent me screenshots of Josh's conversations showing soldiers that had been, you know, talking and detailing soldiers that had been getting killed, and his commander got murdered, and all this stuff that he was dealing with, and I was so just enraged and fearful for him, and I messaged him because I had his I had his information, and he said, "I'm safe, thank God." You guys got to learn how to silence cell phones in here, I got to tell you. That's Hollywood 101 right there. Put the cell phone on silent. But nonetheless, I reached out and I said, "Are you okay?" And he was. And I told my wife, I said, I want to go to Israel. I want to help out. And she goes, "You're 40 years old. What are you going to do in Israel? They're not going to let you in the IDF. You're not going to be able to do anything." And I said, "I really want to go over there." She said, "No, there's a war going on." This was October 7th. And I had this conversation with my wife every day, and she finally said, "You know what? You're never going to forgive me, and if this is what you need to do, go ahead, go with God. If you want to go to Israel, go to Israel." And so I bought a ticket, and I went. I messaged Josh, and I says, "Hey, could you lead me in the right direction to volunteer, do something if I come over there?" And Josh goes, "Buddy, if you come over here, I'll give you my apartment. You can stay in it." I sent him a screenshot of the ticket on El Al, which is the only airline that was flying, and he picked me up from Ben Gurion. So look, I wish I could tell you all the heroic things I got to do in Israel. I wish I could tell you that I could have done some of the stuff that Josh got to do. I didn't. The most meaningful thing to me that I got to do is I got to do security on a Chavah in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. I got to go over there and basically act as a security guard for a few days on a ranch with the women and the children when the guys were going and working. And that was something that I was able to do, and that was very cool. I'm not saying that for applause. I appreciate it. But that was something that was really meaningful. And my wife said, she goes, "Sam," she goes, "You got to come home. You got to come home. What are you going to do? You going to stay over there? How long are you going to stay over there?" And I'm saying, "Baby, we got to make Aliyah. We got to come over here. We got to, But, look, she goes, "You got to come home. People need you here. You got all this nonsense with the encampments at all the universities. You got all this anti-Semitism. My mom and sister, they're out there on the front lines picketing and everything like that." And I go, okay, I came home. And I think, what can I do that's actionable? What can I do that can actually help? I'm a writer now. I play a bad guy on TV sometimes still. What am I going to do that can help? I want to go over there and fight is what I want to do. I'm a fighter. I've been a fighter my whole life. That's what I want to do. But I thought about it. I says, I was a decent boxer, but I really know how to train people. Maybe I could train Jews how to fight. And so, I started this thing, talked about it, called the Bear Jew Boxing Club. And what it is, look, we've slowed down over the last month because all my yeshiva boys the yeshiva's ending. They're all scattering, going to New York and everything. But what I did is I basically just cruised around the Fairfax district, pulling over random young Jews saying, "Hey, buddy, let me talk to you real quick." They're like, "Oh, what's up?" And I said, "Listen," I told them what I'm doing. I said, "I want to train you guys how to fight. You want to learn how to box?" And it spread. So then every week I would have my yeshiva boys, they would come. Thankfully, the rabbi, or maybe they're sneaking out. Hopefully they're not, so I'm not blowing their cover. But they were letting them come to the gym, and I trained a couple. I've done it, over the course of a year, 2 different classes now of yeshiva boys, training them how to defend themselves with boxing, and then opening it up to any Jewish man, woman, or child that wants to come and learn how to box. I do it. And listen, I'm telling, I'm a realist as well, though. I know we're not all going to be, pro fighters here. So a lot of people, it's like, hey, you should probably buy a gun and learn how to use it and go to the range. I don't think you're going to be knocking anybody out anytime soon. But the young men that come to my class and the young women that come to my class and people that want to learn how to defend themselves, yeah, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them. And I'll end with this, because, and I ended with this talking about it, I've said this before, but, my rabbi in California, his name is Mendel Mintz, right? His father's name is Yossi Mintz. Some of you may know him in here. I'm friends with Yossi as well, but Mendel's like my brother, and he's also my rabbi. I love him dearly, and my wife is friends with his wife, Hinda, and so, Mendel told me, he said, people respect a Jew that respect themselves. That's what he told me. That's what Mendel told me. And when I was talking at another place a while ago, he told me, he says, let them know that. Let them know that people respect Jews who respect themselves. And that's always stuck with me, right? That's always stuck with me because people, anti-Semitism is something that's rampant right now. It's rampant right now. I've dealt with it. I have dealt with anti-Semitism many times in my life, but specifically, since this has happened, I've dealt with some crazy anti-Semitism. But you might be anti-Semitic, but you're going to respect me. You're going to respect me. And people respect Jews who respect themselves, and that's what I teach other people. That's what I tell other people. That's what I believe. And look, I'm not Shomer Shabbos yet. God willing, one day I will be. It's a journey. I'm trying to get there. Hashem's got me on a path. I'm trying to follow it to the best of my ability. There's some miracles in my life right now, and I'm just trying to do the right thing every day. And so I'm just so honored that the rabbi brought me here because I love you so much, Rabbi Shyman. Look at that. Bam, I'm good. I love you so much. I'll go 30 seconds over my time limit. I love you so much, Rabbi Shyman. You mean an incredible deal to me and to so many people in this room, so many people that you've helped, and all the people that aren't here that you've helped. And you have a presence from God that you've brought with you everywhere you go. People remember you, and you've helped me in my life so many different times, and you're just somebody that I deeply respect. I respect you. You're somebody that if I'm in LA or California or wherever I am, and you say, hey, Sam, do you think you'd be able to make it this date? Yeah, sure, Rabbi. Actually, it's this date. Can you make it this date? Sure, Rabbi. It's always going to be a sure, Rabbi, because you have that kind of impact, and you've just been a constant in my life over the last 22 plus years. And so I really appreciate everybody listening to me do my thing, even though you had the phones on. But I forgive you for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have an award for Sammy. So we have some time for questions and answers from Sammy. I could bring the mic to you. That might work, so we can all hear, and Sammy will stay here. Any questions for Sammy here? I have a question. So I'm sure you're an active person. What are some of the future things, some of your future projects you'd like to be doing, or things that are going to happen in the future? If you let us know that, please.
Sure, yeah. So right now, my partner and I have created a lot of different television shows. They're called specs that we're bringing out to the market in Hollywood right now, and we're trying to sell a few TV shows. I will say that there's two of the most important projects I'm working on right now. I didn't talk about this in what I was just saying, but my mission right now as a television writer and a film writer and a filmmaker in Hollywood is to create new Jewish archetypes in the world, right? There's a very specific archetype of a Jew. That's not wrong. That's not wrong, but just it's what would be called a trope, right? There's tropes that are Jewish, Seinfeld, Larry David. There's a lot of Jews like that. But I'm not that Jew. And I know a lot of Jews that, Josh ain't that Jew, Russ ain't that Jew. So I want to put different archetypes out into the world of strong, positive Jews. And so I have two films right now. I have two films right now that we're doing, that we're right now, we're basically bringing them to market. We're getting people attached to it. It's the whole thing. I'm not going to bore you with the details. But we're trying to get two movies made, essentially. One that's going to be shot in Israel to show a new side of Israel, a different side of Israel to the world, and a different side of Jews to the world. And we have a project, it's called Aliyah. right? And then we have another project called God Shot, which is one of my favorite words. And yeah, that's what we're doing right now. Thank you. Yeah.
Questions?
You said you're not Shomer Shabbos yet. I'm curious, can you be in this business of show business and be Shomer Shabbos?
It's tough. I know one woman who is from, and she works on television, and it's difficult. It's difficult. And it's also, you know, my wife, while she supports me tremendously, and she'll go to shul with me, and she'll, you know, we go to Chabad and everything like that. But it's a whole new world. She didn't grow up observant, you know, and so it's just, it's a mission. I do think it's possible, and God willing, one day I will be, and I will be able to because I want to. I'm like halfway there. I wear a kippah every day, and I wear a tzitzit under my shirt, but like, you know, I'm halfway there. I'm just not there yet, so we'll see.
Questions? Coming over here. Okay, all right. Okay.
So my question for you is, if this question is challenging, feel free not to answer it or answer any part of it you like.
Yeah.
Tell us more of your story, because I find it fascinating. It sounds like you grew up in a nice, average, middle-class Jewish family.
Yeah.
And so how did your parents, and if you have siblings, deal with the fact that they had a nice Jewish son in prison? How did they get through it, and how did they maintain their relationship?
It was tough. No, it was really tough. I mean, my sisters, thank God I have a great relationship with them now. But it was a lot of work, you know. I made things really tough on my entire family growing up. And my sisters especially, because they were just trying to live their life. They were trying to have an average, regular childhood. And I made that kind of hard because I was always in so much trouble and putting my family through so much that it was really, really, really difficult. And I have two sisters, Jenny and Allison. And Jenny, you know, I think she held a lot of resentments about, rightfully so, with the way that I was. But over the years, I mean, this has been, sobriety again has changed a lot of things in my life. And so I've been sober for almost, God willing, 13 years. And over that course, I was able to make amends to my entire family individually, and that really helped to patch things up. While not perfect, it's a work in progress. But I'm very close to my family now.
We're going to need you to use the mic so that people in the podcast can hear the questions too, please.
First off, you totally rock, period.
Thanks, thank you, thanks.
And secondly, what kind of message would you give to other young people, teens, young adults, who might be in a similar spot for you, looking back?
A great question. Nobody cares. You know? All the people except for your family, hopefully, nobody cares. All the friends that I had back then, they're either dead, they're in jail, or they've moved on with their life, you know? All the people that I was trying to impress back then when I was younger that I wanted to be like so bad. I wanted to prove how much of a badass I was. None of them care. None of them care. And it doesn't matter even if they did, because that's not what means anything. And so it's hard. What do you tell somebody that's young? It's hard because somebody could have told me all this, and I probably would have been like, shut up, you know? But looking back, I wish somebody would have told me, hey, Sammy, nobody cares. These guys that you're hanging out with, they're not going to care about you. When you go to prison, they're not going to put money on your books. They don't care. You know who's going to put money on your books? Your mommy's going to put money on your books. That's who's going to put money on your books. You're not going to get visits from this person, or this person. You know who's going to visit you? Your mother, your sister, maybe your father. That's who's going to visit you. That's what I would tell them. Because now my life is completely different, and I could care less about what any of those people think.
Hello.
Hello.
by the way, child of a Czech Jewish mother, like Horowitz, the last name, and a nice Catholic Italian father who is Hispanic as well. So, awesome. I was wondering, you mentioned wanting to make new tropes and archetypes. Because of confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements, I'm not going to ask for a specific example from your current body of work or what you're working on, but could you please expand upon an example of a trope you're trying to make? Like, what traits do they have? What appearance do they have?
Sure. I wouldn't call it a trope, but certainly an archetype. You know, well, one film that we've written that we're in the process of trying to get produced right now is based much off of my life. Not entirely, but 75% based off of my life. And not in a egotistical way, just because of the, no pun intended, unorthodox upbringing that I had and the route that my life took me, you know, from growing up in a, you know, regular family to then becoming a gang member, in and out of jail, in prison, going back to the street, drugs, addiction, professional boxing, stunts, television writing. It's a little weird, you know what I mean? I know it's a little weird. But it's also, I might be the only person with this specific story, but there's a lot of other people, you know, and some of them are here today, you know. My buddy Josh, my buddy Russ, these are Jews, and they're strong Jews, and they're people that I don't see represented on television. They're people that are good people, that are helping other people, that are doing good for other people. He's a therapist, you know, helping children, helping young people, and also, you know, tough and not taking any shit, and I don't see that on TV. You know, I see people just making Jews look weak and making Jews look like one way or evil or greedy. I'm not greedy. I'm not evil. And I know a lot of, the vast majority of Jews are not that way. And I want to show that. So the projects that I'm doing are putting those type of characters, strong characters, that might not be observant, might not, you know, they might not wear a kippah or a hat or a suit, but they're Jewish nonetheless. And I want those through lines to be out there in the world so that people so that not to hit people on the head with Jew, not to do that, but to show people that there's different sides of Jews out there, that you've got it all wrong, that you're thinking about this all wrong, you know? And that's what I want to put out there, so that people can hope to combat anti-Semitism like that, so that people can maybe think, oh shit, I really empathize with that person. Oh wow, I really humanize that person. I really like that person. I really relate to that person. Oh wow, they're Jewish. Holy shit. Sorry, I mean, but that's the idea. That's all I got for that.
Hi. When you were, so to speak, the bad guy, was there a point where you began to take responsibility or notice the consequence of your actions? And like, was there a turning point where something began to click? And also another question related was, were you feeling like a victim at the time where you felt you had to be part of a gang, etc.?
I'm so sorry. Can you just repeat the last part? I didn't hear you.
Oh, the last part was when you were part of a gang.
Yeah.
Did you feel inside that you were a victim of something or other that forced you to take these actions? That was the last question.
No, I don't think I was a victim of anything. I don't feel like I'm a victim. I never have felt like I was a victim. Even when I've been, you know, I got beaten by 5 correctional officers in Stateville Correctional Center in 2005. You know, I got beaten very badly, got my tooth knocked out, you know, got my head wrung. I didn't think I was a victim then. You know, all of the actions that have happened to me has been a direct result of the things that I did. I put out a lot of bad into the world, and I got bad right back. So I don't, you know, attribute any of that to like, oh, woe is me. Even with all the crap that I've gone through, and I have gone through a lot of crap, I don't attribute that to why some things happen or why I joined a gang. No, I joined a gang because I wanted to be around other psychos like myself. That's why I joined the gang. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry. I'm slow.
When you began to notice, the second part was, when did you begin to notice the consequence of your actions on other people?
I mean, I've always been aware of the consequences of my actions. I've always been aware. I just didn't care. You know, what changed is that I started caring. That's what changed. I've always been aware this might have a negative consequence. This might have a negative, you know, when I went to do a stick-up that put me in prison for 10 years, that got me sentenced to 10 years, I should clarify, that got me sentenced to 10 years in prison. When we were on our way to do that home invasion, I knew this is a Class X felony that carries 6 to 30 years. That could also be extended. I knew this stuff because I'd been to jail plenty of times. I knew what the consequences were, and I decided to keep doing it. I decided, okay, let's go. Hopefully we won't get caught. Plot twist, we did, but that's what happens. Yeah.
Let me get the mic to you, please,
Okay.
so the podcast can hear it. No, we need the mic so the podcast can hear it. Thank you.
Follow up to the last one. Why did you start caring? And can you address that for a second?
Sure. I think through sobriety, I've developed a conscience that I never had before. I think that I started to see what my actions were kind of causing to other people, and I started really taking a look at that in a way that I never did before. And so I'm not going to talk about too much about the 12-step programs and whatnot, right? But I'm in one, and I've been in one. And in the 12-step programs, you go through steps, and part of that is looking at yourself, looking at the things that you've done, you know, and reflecting on those things and seeing how your actions have affected other people. And that's what I started doing and realizing, man, you know, that's pretty rotten, some of these things. And also just the gut. I'll tell you something else. Outside of that, outside of the things that I can consciously address, there's something in my gut that changed. There's something over time. There's something in my gut that just, you know, when somebody gave me too much change, I give it back. Taking my shopping cart and putting it back at the grocery store. Things that I didn't do before, but that I just have a conscious feeling, yeah, I don't want to make somebody walk to go get my grocery cart. I'm going to go return it where I got it. These things just happen. I can't, I don't know exactly what to attribute it to. It just happened, and now I have it, and I don't know why, and I'm still not perfect, but that's what it is.
We have a question here, Sammy.
Who, where are you at?
Sam,
Oh, okay.
you think your ability to teach, specifically writing, could bring a positive chance for guys just like you that went through the kinds of things you went through?
Well, that's why I did it. So, you know, last year, or in August of 23, I found out that Northwestern was in Stateville Correctional Center at the time teaching college classes. I couldn't believe it. I spent years in Stateville. I had horrible moments in Stateville. And so I reached out to the professor, the director of the program, and I just put in the subject line, working Hollywood screenwriter, former Stateville resident, because I wanted to make sure she opened the email. And I said, listen, I was at Stateville. I was an inmate at Stateville. I'm a working Hollywood screenwriter right now. I want to, you know, I work on a TV show. I want to come teach these guys. And it's ironic because for 8 years I was trying to visit my buddy in jail, and they will not let me. They still won't let me. IDOC will not let me go visit people in prison. But through Northwestern, I was approved to walk through those front doors in Stateville. It was unbelievable. It was crazy because some of the interns, some of these young volunteers were looking at me like, "Oh, have you been here before?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been here before." It was crazy. But to answer your question specifically, my life has changed so dramatically in so many different ways. But I don't want to talk too much about Hollywood because it's, you know, Hollywood is all smoke and mirrors in a lot of ways. But here's the thing. In Hollywood, a lot of the hot buzzwords right now are authenticity and lived experience and all this stuff, right? and then you see some of the stuff that ends up on TV, and you're like, what? Like, how'd that happen, right? So when I, with my partner Adam, taught these guys in Stateville and showed them how to do a 3-act structure for a film and 6, plot points for a movie, and brought them through it and showed them how that works and got a log line for their films, 42 different guys. And when I did that with Adam, and I saw not all these guys could be writers. I mean, it was apparent pretty soon, okay, some of these guys, yeah, find a different profession when you get out. But a solid 12, 13 of these men had a lot of talent. And I'm just thinking, geez, man. And look, my mission isn't to just get everybody in prison and shove them in Hollywood. Like, that's not what I'm trying to do. But it's a ripple effect, see? How I look at it is a ripple effect. If one guy can get out and get an introductory, writer's PA job, writer's assistant job, right, in a show and change, then that person can change, help other people. That person can help other people. And the director, her name is Jennifer Lackey in Northwestern, said, Sammy, geez, I wish that other professions would do this too, and they would come in and do some of these things for the guys. So yes, I think that quite literally, men could get out, and if they really try, could break in and add some of the lived experience and authenticity that Hollywood so talks about.
We have a question back here. Thank you.
Sam, I just met you today, and Rabbi was talking about you and said we'd hit it off, and more than a question, it's a statement I want to say in front of everybody. When you said nobody will come and save you, that brought me back to my days when I was bullied. And my family was there for me, my sisters, and everybody at school was a horrible place for me. When you also said not to be a victim, I felt like a victim all my life, so thank you for sharing that with me. And the third thing, talking about authenticity, thank you for bringing that. It means so much, and I'm so grateful that Rabbi brought me into this room today. I love you, my brother.
Thank you, bro. Thank you, John.
We have a couple more questions, please.
Okay.
I never called it a God shot, which is very clever. But do you know what triggered that? What you did to merit you to be able to get a God shot? I would like to have one.
What triggered the word, or what triggered the actual thing?
That happened. That made it happen. What did you do to make it happen?
Because I like to give credit where it's due. I heard God shot from an old guy in an AA meeting years ago. That's where I heard God shot, and I love it. California thing, but I really love it, and I've used it in many conversations. What was my first God shot that got triggered? What did
you do to make it happen?
I didn't do any. You can't. You've probably already had them happen, and you don't even know. Years ago, when I got out of prison and I was addicted to heroin, and I was an absolute psychopath, I was going to kill somebody one day, really. And I went through a gangway in Humboldt Park, and there was a car parked outside on the street. And I was walking through that gangway. I was heading through that gangway from the alley, and my plan was to put some bullets in the car as soon as I got out of the gangway. I had every intention of doing it, and I know I would have done it because I know how my mind worked back then. And it was dark because it was probably about 1 in the morning, and there was no light. And I walked through that alley. I walked through that gangway, sorry, and I bumped into something, right? I bumped into something, and I looked, and it looked like it was a homeless person. I didn't see nobody in the gangway when I was walking through it, but I bumped into a man in the gangway who I don't know what race he was, maybe Puerto Rican, maybe black, I don't know. He had big eyes, and he stared at me, and I put the gun in his face, and I thought to myself, what should I do right here? He's looking at me, even though I had a bandana on, and I said, you didn't see anything. And I pushed him, and I kept walking. And when I got out the gangway, the car had driven down the street. And because of that, I'm not a murderer. That's a God shot. I didn't do anything to trigger it. It just happened.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for Sammy. Sammy, will you be available to hang out in the hallway afterwards to answer questions personally? Yes. Sammy will be available afterwards. I'd like to call on my dear friend Aharon Snowden to come and give me a hand here. Aharon is a major person at our organization. He is a B'nai Noach, and it's always good to see him here. All of you have been given a ticket, a little raffle ticket here, and we're going to have Aharon help us and pick the winner. You should have had that.
We got a lucky one here. I appreciate everybody for participating, and our winning number, the last, is that upside down? Like that, okay? Yeah. The last three are 9, 8, 9.
Yes.
Come on up.
Wonderful. Mazel tov.
These pieces of art are all one-of-a-kind pieces, so you might want to pass this down to your children because it's going to be here 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now.
It's beautiful.
All right.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you all for being here on this such an important event. Your compassion and generosity and being a part of Hinda is so appreciated. You are the reason for our impact, and you are the cause of second chances. Thank you so much. Sam will be available to talk in the hallway. Have a great day, and onward to Shavuot. Thank you so much.